If you have an interest in horses and love learning more about horses, the horse industry, teaching, or even managing your own horse business, then you're in the right place. We would love you to join us on our mission, which is to improve the lives of horses around the world through the education of riders, handlers, and trainers. So get comfortable, listen in, and enjoy.
This has been another episode sponsored by Online Horse College. If you haven't had a look at the wide variety of equine-specific accredited courses, then go to onlinehorsecollege.com and I'll see you over there. If you need help with copywriting, public relations, social media, email marketing, graphic design or website design, then talk to Sophie Barrington at Archer Creative. They give a wide variety of service to help you increase your bottom line through investment in marketing dollars. Simply go to horsechats.com, search for Sophie, search for Barrington or search for Archer Creative. Our guest today is Gareth Mare, who's from South Africa. Gareth is from Heartfelt Horsemanship in South Africa, and we're going to talk to him about natural horsemanship, which is what his specialty is. He started off, he did some trail riding, he was working professionally in the industry, he was training horses, training them for trail ride and farm work, and then was a Western competitive rider as well. He's got a background as a professional musician, and now he just considers himself a musician because he's no longer a professional. He works with Jamie, and they've got a vision for changing the world one horse at a time. How are you today, Gareth?
I'm getting yourself, Glenys.
Yeah, good. Your favourite quote, Gareth, just so people can get to know you a little bit better. What are you going to use for us today?
And my favourite quote is, "The opposite of fear is not bravery, it is knowledge," by Buck Brannaman.
Okay, so you don't have to be brave. You've got to just know a little bit more about yourself, your surroundings, and the animal that you're dealing with.
Yeah, pretty much any situation, the more you know, the less you fear.
Yes. Okay. Now, I know you worked a bit within trail riding and you're working in Western, but the whole field of natural horsemanship, when did you actually get involved in that?
I've always had like an idea that things can be different and things can be better.
Yep.
And I've done a lot of reading, but I really only started to see the scope of it when I met my wife, Jamie.
Okay.
I was asked by the Appaloosa Society of South Africa to teach them when I felt I didn't know much. This was about 7 years ago. Mm-hmm. And they said, okay, well, can you bring in someone that can? So
yes.
I often get teased that I found the pretty blonde. But it wasn't for that. It was for her knowledge.
Okay.
And then we ended up starting a relationship thereafter.
Okay. So you were already teaching them and yet you felt that you taught them as much as what you know already.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was instinctually doing a lot of what I do now, but I didn't have an understanding of the why behind it.
Okay.
So I didn't feel comfortable taking it further.
All right. So really it's Jamie's depth of knowledge that has influenced you as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep. So people who would like to get involved in training, what sort of personality, what sort of core skills do they need to have just to be involved in training horses?
Empathy, patience, they're all important traits, but horses teach you that. I think if you're going to be involved in the horse industry in any way, resilience is your biggest thing. Mm-hmm. Because if you lose heart as soon as you hit the first trouble, whether it's with a horse or with people in the industry, you're not going to keep going. It's the resilience. Horses will teach you the rest. It's just the resilience to keep going.
Yes, resilience is an important one, isn't it? People discount it because they already naturally are resilient, and they don't think it's a skill, but they naturally are. To just keep coming back, I think is very important. It's easy to give up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, you talked about working in the industry, or, we've sort of know that you worked within trail riding. What got you started with horses as a career anyway?
I was actually working in corporate, a very corporate 9-to-5 job.
Yes.
And I went through a personal trauma that made me question things. Mm-hmm. And one of those situations where I just packed up my stuff and headed for the mountains and ended up running the horse trails.
Okay.
But while I was running the trails, I was kind of shocked that people thought I had good abilities because I didn't think I was anything special.
Yep.
And it really was just that awareness. And at that point, I decided, well, maybe this is something that people need to, that needs to be shared.
Mm-hmm.
It's not some magical thing that only some people have. All it takes is being a little bit more aware.
Yep.
And then people started sending their horses to me, and I started teaching people. And then Jamie came over, and we took it to the next level.
Okay. And you found that through personal trauma that horses have helped you. Have you found that with other people, that they've had personal trauma, that the horses have been able to help them through that?
Absolutely. And a lot of the time we're teaching horsemanship, but the horses are engaging in therapy the whole time.
Yes, it's amazing, isn't it? We think we're teaching them and they end up teaching us. Yeah, for sure. What about, you've talked about Jamie influencing you. Who else has influenced you?
Sure. Being in South Africa, everything's kind of so far off. So Jamie was like the first embodiment of this philosophy that I've seen, like purest form. But the Ray Hunt, Tom Dorrance, Buck Brannaman school of thought, absolutely. And then people like Karen Rolfe as well, like the more modern guys. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, that's always in video or a book you're reading. It's not in person.
Yep.
I wasn't deeply involved in the competition world. In fact, for a long time, I stayed away from it intentionally because what I'd seen of it didn't impress me much. So my experience meeting Jamie and learning under Jamie was my biggest point of inspiration.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What do you think, if it was one thing that you had to say, the first thing that you learned from Jamie, what do you think that was? What was the thing that you learned very early that you thought was outstanding, besides the fact that she was pretty blonde?
Well, I actually thought about this a lot when you sent me the questions. Like, it wasn't, I don't even think it's anything that Jamie can put into words. So I think my biggest growth has come from, she has this completely different perspective that she doesn't put into words, and I don't think I can either. Every reaction she has with a horse has a kind of different feel to it. And I think my biggest growth has been trying to understand that unspoken aspect. So I suppose it's feel. What Tom Dorrance talks about is feel, and you can't teach feel. Trying to watch it from the outside and understand it, I think that's the biggest thing that she's taught me.
Yes, teaching feel, understanding it, explaining it, and people want it on a timeline. Yep. Today I want to learn feel. Tell me about, feel today. And it just doesn't happen like that. Yeah, and it's only once you achieve it that you understand how important it is, but how it's not something that is just taught in one lesson. Yeah.
It's an introspective thing. It's not a tangible outward feeling. So watching someone else and striving for it is as good as you can get until it happens.
Now, with your career as a musician, because being professional, you would have had, a fair bit of knowledge about that. How do you consider that to working with horses? What can you bring across from being a musician? What can you bring across into working with horses?
Rhythm.
Okay.
I believe everything in horses' life is rhythm. When they're grazing in the fields in the herd, they actually graze in time, and that's kind of a signal from the herd that everything is safe. A trot or a canter in rhythm as a herd is a sign of danger. So I think understanding what rhythm means to horses and having an understanding of horses of rhythm separately does help being a little bit more consistent in how you teach and how you train as well.
Yes, it's something that I don't think anyone's actually said before. The rhythm, I'm just thinking horses, if they're grazing, chewing, hanging around, and then all of a sudden it gets a bit fast, or just cantering around, and then all of a sudden there's a bit of a worry and a bit of a quickness about it becomes a problem.
Yeah, and people often wonder why horses struggle working at the higher gates if you're training through fear, because they only associate a canter with fleeing. So we need to actually teach them that they can canter in a relaxed environment, and it's not just going to come naturally. So there's little insights about rhythm that I think have been a blessing for me being a musician.
Yeah. Have there been any particular horse that you think that has been a very big learning curve for you? You know, a particular horse that you've learned good things, learned what not to do, or just learned more about horses? Anyone that you'd like to mention?
Absolutely. My Appaloosa Stallion, Dream Hunter. And, most horsemen will talk about that one difficult horse that made them think of things differently or made them try a different way. Ray Hunt talks about Hondo. I always kind of felt cheated that because I didn't feel like I had that, because every horse that I dealt with was a difficult horse. People always just associate natural horsemanship as, that's what you do when you've got to sort out a problem horse. But Hunter's horses, the stud that bred my stallion, gave me the chance to train him. And it was the first time that I'd actually had a horse beyond the difficult point, or just starting them out, and I took it to the next level. And it showed me how natural horsemanship can improve show performance. It's not just to fix a problem or, to make your relationship better for a general hack. It actually improves show performance. So the stuff that I learned from dealing with all those troubled horses ended up having me win at a national level against better riders than me, just from having that relationship and attention to a relaxed horse. So he definitely took things to a different level. So it wasn't really that troubled horse that forced me to learn something different. It was the horse that showed me that what I had learned from those troubled horses has a bigger part to roll than I ever expected.
What makes you the happiest? Is it thinking about, having a win like that, or is it working constantly all the time with horses, with easy horses or troubled horses, or helping riders with their horses? What makes you the happiest?
The thing that is the most rewarding for me is seeing a change in the industry. So our example is Appaloosa Nationals this last year. We had about 30 riders competing, and they were winning in their classes against top-level riders, winning championships. Seeing it be commonplace for people to ride with more empathy and still win, it kind of gives you hope, and that's the most rewarding thing.
So when you talk about change, the positive change. Yeah. If you were, because just teaching and helping people, what do you think is a common challenge that they've got that you could turn into a training tip for our listeners?
One of the things that I think people get tripped up on is, a lot of the knowledge that we have in the horse industry is hundreds of years old, and the formal education system hasn't really adjusted much. So we still deal with the thing that horses are unpredictable. I don't believe that at all. I think horses are completely predictable. Once you acknowledge that and you make an effort to understand their motivation for every action, training actually gets pretty easy. I think the horses are unpredictable thing becomes an excuse. If they're unpredictable, then we don't have to make an effort to understand them. But now science is also supporting what these old cowboys have been telling us for 50 years, is that you can predict them, and it's your responsibility to learn to understand them.
So if you make the effort to understand them, you can predict them. Yeah, okay. It puts a different slant on it, doesn't it? Because it's always that horses are unpredictable, but horses don't do things for no reason. There's always a reason for what they do. And it's if you don't understand the reason, it's very easy to say, oh, they did it for no reason. But once you become associated a lot more about horses, you realise that there really is a reason for everything, and horses act out of instinct.
Absolutely.
Mm, mm.
And they give us pretty clear indications of when those instincts are going to come up. And working with relaxation with the horse, if you can tell a horse is not relaxed, we now have ways that we can get them relaxed, and we have a far calmer starting point. And then when that instinct kicks in, we don't go to the full crazy moments that get us in trouble.
Yes, if we push them to the point that we don't understand their actions. Yeah, okay. If you're an equestrian coach or a horse riding instructor, or even if you aspire to be one, have a look at the free video series for horse riding instructors on the Horse Chats website. Go there now, have a look, horsechats.com. What are you looking forward to at the moment, Gareth? You know, you're doing a lot of work with Jamie. Have you got young horses coming on? Or you going, I can see that you've got lots of information to give the world, but what are you doing to get it out there? Just tell us a little bit about what you've got planned in the future.
Okay, and over the last year, Jamie and I have co-authored a course on natural horse management. Mm-hmm. It's not just training, it covers all aspects from the training through to husbandry. And our hope is that this course becomes standard. And, last year it has really flown in South Africa. We've reached as far as Dubai, the Seychelles, into Africa, Norway. My hope is that this becomes standard in the industry, and we see a new definition of what is normal in the equestrian industry, where riders are safer and horses are happier.
Yes, that's definitely important. Yeah. When you're saying, what's the most common thing that you find with horse behaviour that becomes a problem? I'm thinking for our listeners, let's turn this into a lesson. If there's a particular behaviour, what would you say would make it predictable? What would you say that they could do if they're in that situation?
Okay, so horses will only do what they think they need to do to survive, or what they think is the right thing to do.
Yep.
But how they decide something's the right thing to do is when they're in danger and they react in a certain way. If they survive by reacting that way, that becomes the correct way to behave. So we have a set of principles that we apply to every situation. So rather than sitting and teaching people the mechanics of something, we say, well, consider everything through these principles. And, they're not new principles. It's been around since Tom Lawrence and Ray Humphrey teaching. It's as gentle as possible, but as firm as necessary. Because if you start as firm as necessary, you will never get any lighter. Never release on a brace, because that becomes, when a horse is bracing against something and you release, you're giving them that I survived by bracing. So you're basically teaching a brace. Reward the slightest try. Like, when the horse is operating out of fear, we need to acknowledge that we may not get the answer we're looking for, but we need to give them a clue that they're heading in the right direction. Mm-hmm. And then something you spoke about earlier, that the horse sets timeline. If they're operating on fear, or they've learned a bunch of things that don't serve them in the human world, we can't say when they're going to get through it. They've got a justified reason behind that behavior, and we need to work them through it and let them take their time. If we process every task we ever have through those principles, anything's possible. There's no horse problem that will come up, or on the other side of it, there's no aspect of performance that you can't get right by processing through those principles.
Yeah. That's a really good philosophy. I'm just thinking, if you had to sum it up just in one or two sentences, what would you say? Can you make it any more brief than that, or is that all important parts?
Yeah, I think the gentle as possible, as firm as necessary, does really cover all of it. But it's it does go a little deeper.
Yeah. All right. Look, good talking to you today, Gareth. I'd like to get you back, but also like to get Jamie back on the show. I think both of you have got a unique way in the world. Well, you know, you live in a unique place and a unique message. And I think, just getting it out there is important. And it's important for the horses, not just important for the people. But, when you think that the main benefactor are the horses, then it becomes an important message. So I'd love to talk to you again about coming back and get you back sometime in the future.
That'd be great. Thank you.
All right. Well, we'll talk to you a bit soon.
Okay. Thanks, Glenys.
Now, if you're still there, you probably know that I'm absolutely passionate about education within the horse industry. That's why I host this podcast. My other venture is Online Horse College. Have a look now at onlinehorsecollege.com and I'll see you over there.
Remember that our comments and instructions are general in nature and do not take into consideration your individual horses or your individual ability and circumstances. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please leave your comment below.